You think you know Pastor Creflo Dollar, the man behind millions in ministry, private jets, and lavish lifestyle, but the truth behind closed doors will shock you. From personal struggles that almost broke him to scandals that shook his congregation, what happened next is something no one saw coming. Stay with me, because this story changes everything you thought you knew about one of America's most controversial pastors. When it comes to megachurch pastors, few names spark as much debate as Creflo Dollar. Revered by some, criticized by others, he has built an empire that stretches from Atlanta to the far corners of the world. But behind the sermons, the luxury cars, and the headlines lies a story rarely told. You won't believe the personal struggles, the financial controversies, and the shocking moments that threaten to unravel everything he built. In this video, we'll take you inside the life of a man who preaches faith, prosperity, and success, yet faces battles that most people could never imagine. This is where it gets unbelievable. The challenges, the scandals, and the decisions that shaped not just his ministry, but his very identity. By the end, you'll see Creflo Dollar in a light few have ever seen, and some of the revelations may leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Creflo Dollar's story begins not in mansions or private jets, but in humble beginnings that shaped the man he would become. Born in College Park, Georgia, he grew up witnessing struggles that most would call ordinary hardships, yet they planted a seed for extraordinary ambition. As a young man, he felt the pull of faith early, preaching in small local churches, speaking with a voice that demanded attention and commanded respect. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Creflo had founded World Changers Church International. What started as a small congregation quickly ballooned into one of the largest ministries in the country. His sermons preached prosperity, faith, and divine favor, and soon people from across the globe were drawn to his teachings. But with rapid success came a lifestyle that would both define and haunt him. Private jets, multi-million-dollar homes, luxury cars, the outward symbols of his ministry's success painted a picture of triumph. To many, he was the embodiment of the American dream, a pastor who spoke of God's favor and lived it in full color. Yet behind the gleaming cars and sprawling estates, cracks began to show. Questions arose from both congregants and critics alike. How could a man of God justify such wealth? Was it a reflection of divine blessing, or something far more controversial brewing behind the pulpit? And just as Creflo seemed untouchable, the first major storm hit his ministry. A financial controversy erupted, attracting media attention and scrutiny that no amount of charisma could fully deflect. But what happened next would take everyone by surprise, leaving both supporters and skeptics questioning the man behind the sermons. Behind the polished image of Creflo Dollar, the powerful sermons, the vast ministry, and the lifestyle that seemed untouchable, there were personal battles that few ever saw. Even as he preached prosperity and divine favor, the man himself was wrestling with struggles that threatened to undo everything he had built. Sources close to him revealed that the pressures of leading one of America's largest congregations weighed heavily. The expectations were immense. People looked to him not just for spiritual guidance, but for answers to their own personal hardships. Every sermon carried the weight of a nation's faith. And for a man who believed so strongly in perfection and divine success, that burden became almost unbearable. Beyond the pulpit, Creflo faced deeply personal challenges. Reports of marital tension, private family struggles, and moments of doubt painted a picture far different from the confident, charismatic leader seen on stage. He admitted in rare interviews that there were nights when the stress of leadership, criticism, and expectations left him questioning his path and even his faith. These were moments the cameras never captured, moments when the man behind the ministry felt isolated, vulnerable, and deeply human. And then there were the rumors, whispers that circulated within church circles and the media. Some questioned whether the pressures of fame and wealth had led to choices that contradicted the very teachings he espoused. While nothing was ever fully confirmed, the speculation was enough to cast shadows over his ministry and ignite conversations among critics and congregants alike. But what makes this story so compelling and so heartbreaking is that even amidst these struggles, Creflo Dollar continued to preach, continued to inspire, and continued to grow his empire. It's a paradox, a man facing personal demons, yet performing publicly as if untouched. Just when it seemed the private struggles could be contained, a scandal erupted that threatened not only his reputation, but the trust of thousands who had looked to him for guidance. And what unfolded next would shock even his most loyal followers, leaving many questioning the very foundations of his ministry. No story about Creflo Dollar would be complete without addressing the controversies that have followed him for decades. From his high-profile lifestyle choices to financial scrutiny, every headline seemed to draw more attention and more questions than the last. One of the most talked about controversies was his use of church funds for luxury purchases. Headlines around the world highlighted the shocking news: private jets, multi-million-dollar mansions, and extravagant cars, items that many felt were far beyond what a pastor should own. Critics argued that such wealth undermined the very message of humility and service that Christianity often preaches. Yet Creflo defended his lifestyle as a sign of divine blessing, insisting that his prosperity was not just personal, but a tool to expand his ministry's reach. The argument divided communities. Loyal followers maintained that his wealth was God-given, a testament to faith and vision. Critics countered that such extravagance bordered on excess, leaving many wondering, where does faith end and personal gain begin? But financial debates were just the tip of the iceberg. Rumors of internal church conflicts, tense relationships with other pastors, and disagreements over leadership decisions began to surface. Some insiders described moments of tension so severe that they threatened to splinter parts of his congregation. These weren't just minor disagreements. They were clashes over values, authority, and vision, creating a storm behind the polished sermons and televised appearances. And then came the moment that truly tested his legacy. A publicized legal battle over church finances shook not just his ministry, but the faith of thousands. The details were murky, the media coverage relentless, and the speculation unending. Questions emerged. Was Creflo Dollar above the law, or had he crossed a line that could no longer be ignored? Despite the turmoil, Creflo remained outwardly composed, delivering sermons with unwavering confidence. But behind closed doors, the pressure was mounting. Those closest to him spoke of sleepless nights, strained relationships, and the constant weight of scrutiny that never seemed to end. And just when it seemed the controversies couldn't escalate any further, a revelation surfaced, one that stunned his supporters and critics alike. The truth, hidden for years, was finally coming to light. What happened next would challenge the very narrative he had built, and the fallout would ripple far beyond the walls of his church. Every empire, no matter how strong, faces moments that test its foundation, and for Creflo Dollar, that moment came with an intensity few could imagine. After years of criticism, scandals, and personal battles, he found himself standing at a crossroads. The public image of a successful pastor was intact, but privately, he was facing a storm that threatened to consume him entirely. Insiders reveal that during this period, Creflo experienced profound personal crises. Late nights were filled with reflection, guilt, and questioning, not just about his decisions, but about his faith itself. The same man who had preached prosperity and divine favor was now grappling with vulnerability, doubt, and the weight of scrutiny that no one could escape. Even those closest to him admitted the tension was palpable. It was as if the very ministry he had built could collapse under its own weight. But amid the chaos, something remarkable happened. Creflo Dollar began a journey of introspection and transformation. He publicly acknowledged the criticism, addressed some of the controversies, and sought to reconcile with those who had questioned his leadership. It wasn't easy, far from it. The path to redemption demanded humility, resilience, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. And yet, through this period of turmoil, the man behind the megachurch emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. Stories from congregants highlight moments of genuine connection, where Creflo shared not just the triumphs, but the struggles that had shaped him. These moments, rare and unfiltered, allowed people to see the human side of a figure often viewed as larger than life. Still, the journey wasn't without its ongoing challenges. Questions about wealth, ministry decisions, and personal conduct continued to circulate, reminding everyone that redemption is not a single event. It's a process, and it requires constant vigilance. Even after acknowledging past mistakes and seeking to make amends, Creflo faced skepticism from critics who wondered whether true transformation was possible. And then came a turning point, a public act or decision that seemed to signal a new chapter, one that could redefine how the world saw him. It was bold, unexpected, and in many ways, controversial. Supporters celebrated it as a sign of spiritual renewal, while detractors questioned its authenticity. But one thing was clear: Creflo Dollar had weathered storms that could have destroyed him, and yet he was still standing. As the years have passed, Creflo Dollar's story has evolved from one of meteoric rise and controversy to a complex narrative of legacy, lessons, and resilience. For many, he is a symbol of faith, ambition, and determination. For others, he remains a figure shrouded in questions about wealth, leadership, and the moral responsibilities of a spiritual guide. Creflo's impact on the modern gospel movement is undeniable. World Changers Church International continues to attract thousands, and his teachings have inspired countless lives around the globe. Many testify that his sermons brought hope, motivation, and spiritual awakening, especially for those seeking to rise above adversity. In that sense, his legacy as a preacher and influencer is secure, yet the story is not without nuance. Critics point to the controversies as reminders that even figures of faith are human, capable of mistakes, misjudgments, and actions that spark debate. These moments, however, also serve as powerful lessons. Lessons about the fine line between ambition and excess, transparency and secrecy, faith and pride. Creflo's journey reminds us that leadership, especially spiritual leadership, carries weight that few outside the pulpit can comprehend. The scrutiny, the expectations, and the constant balancing act between personal life and public persona are burdens that can test even the strongest individuals. And while some may never forgive or forget the controversies, others see the human side, a man striving to reconcile his faith, his ambitions, and his mistakes. What makes his story compelling is not just the scandals or the wealth, but the lessons embedded in his life. He exemplifies the paradox of human complexity, a man preaching prosperity while navigating personal struggles, facing public criticism while pursuing redemption, and leading a congregation while wrestling with his own doubts. As we reflect on Creflo Dollar's journey, one truth becomes clear. Legacy is not defined solely by success or scandal, but by resilience, adaptation, and the courage to face one's own flaws. For viewers watching this story unfold, it's a reminder that behind every headline, every sermon, and every public figure lies a human being with struggles, choices, and a path of redemption that is ongoing. So the question we leave with is this: can Creflo Dollar fully reconcile the man with the ministry? Can he balance ambition, faith, and accountability in a way that satisfies both God and the world? Or will the weight of scrutiny and past controversy always follow him, shaping the narrative for generations to come? One thing is certain: his story is far from over, and the lessons from his life continue to provoke thought, debate, and inspiration for anyone watching. And as we watch the next chapters unfold, the journey of Creflo Dollar serves as a mirror, reflecting the triumphs, trials, and redemption that are possible in every human life.